And welcome back to the fourth week of the Quiet Man series. This is episode 22, headlined Notebooks and Living with Insecurity. I'd left you at the end of yesterday with a thread. I'd been to this boat race party and I met this lovely woman. Her name was Cherry and she'd taken a photograph of me and Jack Nicholson. The thread didn't continue for too long. Ultimately, I just wasn't rich enough for Cherry. I had a lot of fun though, and our paths eventually diverged. One of the things I did leave with though, she bought me this fabulous photograph. If you remember, I loved hiking in Snowdon, and we'd been in this village in Snowdon, and she came back with this superb photograph of this mountaineer perched right on the top of a cliff edge. And in a way, that was a wonderful metaphor for my life, because I was right on that knife edge, living with insecurity. I did start embarking on a period of life which was certainly known as interesting times. One of the things I'd forgotten living in the States was the beauty of English sarcasm, the beauty of English wit and repartee. And somebody said to me, "May you live in interesting times." And that has such a double edge to it. In other words, is your life going to be good and interesting, but are you prepared to cope with the challenges of living in interesting times? One of the things I was learning was just to live in the moment. And still being with Dale Carnegie, we would have annual training conferences and had one that year up in York. York is an absolutely magical city. If you've never been there, please visit. There are three things that still live with me to this day about that conference. One of the chaps that was presenting was a man called Terry Ostroviak, and he told this absolutely wonderful story about how he was at home one day and he saw his daughter Orit on the floor playing with a chrysalis. He was poking it around and Terry said, "Orit, just leave it alone. Just leave it be." I had to go out and run some chores, and when he came back, Orit was sitting on the floor with the remains of a cocoon and she was sobbing a little bit. I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Well, I wanted to help. I wanted to help the butterfly. I saw it struggling, and so I cut away the cocoon so that it could emerge, and it just fell over." And Terry turned around and said, "Orit, the way of the world with butterflies when they're emerging from their cocoons is you've got to let them struggle. If you let them struggle, then they too can build the muscles necessary to keep the wings going. If you don't allow them to struggle, they will not thrive on their own." And I listened to that story and I thought, that's beautiful. There's so many messages in there. There's so many layers in that one story that I can use. I said to Terry, "Can I use that story in a book I'm going to write? We need to struggle to thrive." I overheard one of the Swiss associates say to his colleagues, "Life's all about living, laughing and learning." And I thought, oh, that's powerful. Now, I always carry a notebook with me. Here's one right now. And straight away, I jotted down those three words: living, laughing and learning. And that became the seeds for a book that I eventually wrote called The A to Z of Positive Thinking. Now, when I got back from the conference, I wrote those three words up: living, laughing and learning. Quite quickly, I realised there was a word missing, which was love. And so I made it a motto: living, laughing, loving, learning. And I had a friend that knew Latin and he translated it for me: Vivens, recens and Mars descends. Live, laugh, love and learn. And then I got to thinking, how many positive words are there in the English language? I started writing them down again in one of my notebooks. Pretty soon I realised I'd run out of positive words. So I had to go to the dictionary and I started writing all the words I could find out the dictionary. Now, in a dictionary, what percentage of words do you think are positive? Most people say 20%, 30%. It's actually less than 5%. How many are negative? It's quite a thought, isn't it? In actual fact, there are 3 times as many negative words in the English language as there are positive words. And that became the basic theme for the book called The A to Z of Positive Thinking, which is still going strong over 25 years later. The themes from that conference that came through was Terry's story about letting things struggle so that they can thrive on their own, so that they can build their own muscle memory. And as for butterflies, so for humans, sometimes you have to let people struggle in order to cope and be resilient on their own. Sometimes if you help too much, too soon, you create dependency in the system. And this is a theme that I will definitely return to in some of the chapters to come. The second lesson from this episode in my life is always carry a notebook, because the faintest of ink will last longer than the best of memories. And if I hadn't written those 3 words down, living, laughing and learning, my first book would never have happened. If you've liked this episode, give it the thumbs up, share it, like it, and I'll see you tomorrow for chapter 23. Thank you very much.